Do you know the ways in which a coach can lose their job? Believe it or not, coaches at the high school level rarely get fired for losing. Now, if people complain enough about losing, it may be the actual reason, but they'll generally find something else to put out publicly. After all, they don't want to make high school just about winning and losing. We're going to have some stories today that touch on just how people can get in trouble with the human resource department. Now, when I was hired to coach at McBee High School in the late 1980s, the principal, Mitchell Baker, told me, I don't care if you win games or not, because you're not going to win games here. Well, he was wrong about that. We had an undefeated season the second year. But anyhow, it's what he said next that mattered the most. He said to me, keep your hands off the money and out of the cheerleaders' pants, and you'll be fine. You can keep this job for as long as you want it. Now, that's sage advice for a young coach, because those are two ways to quickly lose your job and probably your career, not to mention your freedom. I got another piece of sage advice some years later when coaching at Leesville Road High School in Raleigh. We had an equipment manager who had been with the program in one way or another since the school opened about 13 years before I got there. He was a great guy, worked his butt off to try to help that program. Now, by the time I left, he was no longer the equipment manager, but instead the director of football operations. He was that important to what we did, and his job went way beyond taking care of equipment. He would help take care of paperwork. He kept me hydrated at practice. He did all the laundry. He would take the uniforms home and hang them up to dry over the weekend. He once made a uniform manufacturer replace an entire set of white jerseys because they wouldn't come clean using the manufacturer's instructions. He kept people out of the team box during games. No parent was going to wander down there. He made sure the press kept their distance. There weren't going to be clips of me losing my mind on the sidelines as long as he was around. He even escorted me across the field after games, like those state troopers that you see with college coaches on TV. Now, he was a no-nonsense guy, and he helped me keep an eye on the kids from time to time. And he knew exactly what I expected. He tried his best to enforce my policies. So one Thursday, we had a JV game, and he was going through checking the kids' equipment pre-game, which is part of what he did every game, JV and varsity. He made sure their helmets fit properly. He made sure their buckles were buckles and their snaps were snapped. He made sure they had shoelaces if they needed. Whatever the kids needed to help make sure that from an equipment standpoint, they were ready to play and play safely, he took care of. But he also made sure that they weren't wearing something that was against the rules, either the National Federation rules, state rules, or my rules. Well, as he went around checking on everybody this day, he came across one kid who was wearing something he wasn't supposed to. He told the kid he needed to take it off. This was one of those kids that had all sorts of issues. And instead of taking it off, he decided he would cuss my guy out. Now, this is the first game of the season. And this kid was one of those young JV kids that as a coach, you know he's a problem. But he's young, and you're going to try to see if you can save him. so you kind of keep him around if you can. He'd managed to make it through the preseason and to the first game without getting into anything really serious. Cursing out one of my assistants and threatening him is a huge no-no. That's just not going to fly with me. It's not going to fly with any decent coach. So I was notified about the problem, and I came down to the field immediately from my office. I told the kid to go to the locker room and turn in his equipment. He was done. As far as I was concerned, that was the end of it. But on Monday, I was called into the principal's office. The principal, Dr. Stephen Gainey, another outstanding administrator I was so fortunate to work for, told me we had a big issue. The kid's mom was raising holy hell. She had not found satisfaction with Dr. Gainey telling her that I made personnel decisions on the football team and that he stood behind what I had done with her son. She was threatening to go to the district office in order to get satisfaction. So Dr. Gainey told me the whole story, and then he explained exactly where things stood. I could get rid of the kid and he'd stand behind me. But if I did that, and she went to the district office, as she was threatening to do, there was a very good chance that they would force us to get rid of the equipment manager as well as the kid. He's a volunteer, Dr. Gainey explained. There's no protection for those guys, and the district will get rid of them in a heartbeat just to make a problem go away. The other choice he gave me was that instead of getting rid of the kid and probably losing my coach, was to put the kid on a contract and on probation. The contract would spell out in writing what the rules were and what the expectations were, what the consequences would be as far as the behavior of our players. Simply put, if he violated the rules again, he would be off the team for good. No questions asked. As Dr. Gainey explained it, you know he's going to mess up again. And when he does, he'll be gone. And if he doesn't, you've worked a miracle. So I chose to save my guy. I made out a contract and had both the player and his mother sign it. 2 days later, he tried to start a fight with another player at practice. And then again, he mouthed off to a coach who was trying to break up the fight. He was gone. Problem solved. The lesson, as Dr. Gainey put it, don't ever let something leave the building. Don't let the people in the district office get involved if you can solve the problem without them. It's actually common sense. Your principal hired you. He likes you. He wants you there. And he will protect you from minor things that arise. The district office, on the other hand, is more concerned with not getting sued and not getting on the 7 o'clock news. So let's get to some other stories about possibly getting in trouble. Another year at Leesville Road, I was teaching what's called an inclusion class. That meant that I had some students who were classified as learning disabled, along with my so-called regular students. Those learning disabled students had IEPs that had to be met. An IEP is an educational plan that's specific to that student. It kind of sets out goals that he's supposed to accomplish or that she's supposed to accomplish in your class during that year. So those students attended regular classes throughout the day, like mine. But they also had a class where they received some extra help from their special education teacher. In some of their classes, like mine, which is again called an inclusion class, they also had a special education teacher in the class, along with me, to help them. Now, normally, not always, but normally, the teacher who was in class with me would also be the teacher they met with in their extra class for special help. So in this particular class, I have a student whose mother was notorious. Now the child was a sweetheart. She worked very, very hard, and she did very well on her work. She always made A's and B's, and she was one of those kids that was just, a joy to have in class. Mom, on the other hand, was one of those you were always warned about. She was going to be trouble. As we rolled through the semester, though, the student did very well, and I didn't have any issues with the mom. But the same was not true for the special education teacher. Mom was constantly emailing her. No real complaints, just constant emails. But at one point, Mom did not like a B that the girl got on a project she did for class. And by she, I mean Mom, not the student. The mom did the project. It was that obvious. And I think that's what really upset her. She did the project and was mad because it only got a B. Now, she didn't email me about it. She only emailed the special education teacher. She was extremely ugly to her, questioned her ability, questioned her professionalism. No complaints about me, just her. The special education teacher came to me in tears. Now, I was the one that graded the project, after all, not the special education teacher, although she had a little bit of input. So I told her to forward the email to me, and I would answer the mother. So she sent it to me, and I replied to the mom. My response to the mom was polite, but it was forceful and to the point. I went through the rubric and how the deductions on the project met the rubric. And I also told her about the great work that the special education teacher was doing with the students in my class. I also praised her daughter's work, what she'd done throughout the course, and told her how much I enjoyed having her in class, which was true. I left her with nothing to complain about. I copied the special education teacher and the principal, Dr. Gainey, on the email. The special ed teacher emailed me back immediately, thanking me for how well I handled it. The principal also did the same. I emailed back to the teacher, but not Dr. Gainey, just the teacher on this one, and told her that my response to the mother was actually my second attempt at emailing her. Since the first one started out, "Look, bitch." The teacher came to my room immediately. She was still laughing when she got there. But fast forward to the next school year. The mother got into a big argument with another teacher in another course. She demanded copies of all correspondence concerning her daughter since she had enrolled at the high school. Under the Freedom of Information Act, the school had to produce them. The school district kept all the emails on file, even if the teacher deleted them. So all of her teachers at Leesville wrote, Anybody who had ever taught her since she had gotten to high school had to produce all of her records, including all emails that concerned her in any way whatsoever. We literally had to pull up all of our emails about her and print them out and take them to the principal. So I did, including the look bitch one. I went to Dr. Gainey's office with the folder of emails, and I had put that one on top of the stack inside the folder. Now, he was busy when I went into the office and handed him the folder. He took it, laid it on the stack that he was collecting from all the teachers, and went back to work. I said, you might want to take a look at the one on top. So he stopped what he was doing, opened the folder, took out the top page, and he read it. He kind of looked up at me over his reading glasses, hesitated a moment, and then crumpled up the paper and threw it in the trash. He went back to work. I left his office. Disaster avoided. Keep it in the building. Now, special education was an area where disaster was always just waiting. That's an area that can get you fired in a heartbeat. Mr. Baker talked about money and cheerleaders. He could have easily added special education. When you mess that up, you're messing with the federal government. That's when you've got real problems. Special education was when I encountered the person that I called the human resource Nazi. He was the singular most scary person I ever encountered in 49 years of teaching. I was working at Apex High School when they came and got me out of class and had someone with them to cover my class. That's just never a good sign. They don't take you out of class for no reason. Now, at that point, I wasn't a head coach. So I wasn't being taken out of class because the kids screwed up. So I'm running the last few days through my mind. What could I have possibly done? And I couldn't think of anything. When I got to the office, they took me to the conference room, and there were a couple of people in the room sitting at the conference table. At the end of the table was the assistant principal, and across the table was a guy I didn't know wearing a short sleeve white shirt, a tie, and a crew cut. It was like Sergeant Joe Friday from Dragnet was sitting across the table from me, asking for just the facts. Now, everything over the last few days was rapidly going through my mind over and over as I was beginning to panic. And I looked at the assistant principal. She looked at me and said, "This isn't about you." I calmed down a little and sat down. Mr. Crew Cut Joe Friday, now this is like 2004, and he's got a crew cut. He slides a sheet of paper across the table to me and he says gruffly, "Is that your signature?" And I look at the paper. I recognize it. It's a special education form used at the end of special education meetings to show that the teachers have signed off on the modifications for the students' IEPs that were agreed upon at the meeting. My name is on it. There's a signature on it, but I didn't sign it. Panicky, I look at the assistant principal. "This isn't about you," she says again. Now I'm thinking, this may not be about me, but it's about somebody. And it's obviously a big deal. So what do? I look at her again. Same thing. It isn't about you. Slide the paper back across the table. I tell the HR guy, that's my name. That's not my signature. And here comes another paper across the table. Is that your signature? Again, that's my name. That's not my signature. And here comes another paper across the table. Is that your signature? That's my name. That's not my signature. And there's another, it's not about you, being thrown in between. We repeat this over and over and over. Him sliding a sheet of paper, asking the same question, and me giving him the same response. He's always gruff. It's like I'm being cross-examined by Perry Mason with a bad haircut, a bad tailor, and a bad attitude. Until finally they're done. I look at the assistant principal one more time before I go. And I ask, should I be worried about anything here? She tells me, nope. Like I said, this is not about you. We just have to verify some things. You're not the only teacher being called in. Now, later on, they eventually tell me what they can about the situation. It turns out the special education teacher, who was also a coach, got behind on these time-consuming special ed meetings. They were beginning to cut into his practice time. So he began to fake the meetings. He didn't hold the meetings. He made them up. He forged the teachers' signatures. He forged the parents' signatures. We were all called in to verify that those weren't our signatures. Had we said they were when they weren't, we would have been fired right on the spot. So, boys and girls, let's remember the important rules. Don't mess with the money or the girls. Don't mess with the federal government. Be careful what you put in an email. That stuff lasts forever. Keep everything with your immediate superior and in the building, not with big bosses who don't know you. Oh, and by the way, always work for good bosses. If you do get into trouble, it may be that the only thing you can do is pray. And in our next episode, we'll talk about football and prayer. So long until then.